This is an incident that occurred when I was around 9 years old. Even today, at 34, I still think about what could have been. As a child, my parents both worked full-time and sometimes they couldn't find or afford a babysitter when I had winter, summer, and spring break. So I would be home alone until either of them returned from work. There were two main rules. Number 1, never answer the door. And 2, don't play too close to the windows in case someone is watching. I was 100% guilty of hanging near the windows. I liked the lighting, and I was a bored kid. Come on, no one had ever knocked on the door before while I was alone. So, my father leaves for work and he goes over the rules again. After a few hours of playing near the window, someone knocks on the door. I freeze and I don't answer. They knock again, and at this point, in my little mind, I'm thinking that it has to be someone I know if they're knocking twice. So I answer. I open the door and there is an intimidating woman with a clipboard wearing a hat with an American flag on it, very official looking to a child. She asks how old I am. I lie and I say that I'm 12. She says that she's from an institution that I can't remember. She tells me, "You're a liar. You're home alone and it's illegal. You have to come with me now. Let's go." I start crying very loudly because I'm scared to get my parents in trouble. And after all, this woman is an adult. She must be right? I almost went with her. I started crying even louder, and a neighbor made a noise in our complex, and the lady all of a sudden tells me, "Never mind, it's okay. You don't have to come with me. Shh." She hurried off, and at the time my parents weren't doing well financially, so I didn't have landline. Cell phones? Not in 1996. I couldn't call my family, and I couldn't call 911. I waited all day for my dad to come home. I am assuming that she knew that I was alone because she had been watching me. And I never really spoke on that incident because I felt that it was my fault for breaking the rules. Someone knocked on my window at 3 a.m. by U/Vanessa 55 555. This summer, I decided to pick up some graveyard shifts at my current full-time job, simply because it pays more, and I'm a university student drowning in student debt. About 2 weeks ago, on the rare occasion that I get to sleep during the time that the sun is down, at 3:30 to 4 a.m., I was suddenly awoken by a loud sound. Me being half asleep, I honestly didn't know what the sound exactly was, so I just chopped it up to being one of my neighbors dropping something because I live in an apartment with very thin walls. So I just tried going back to sleep. After about 10 minutes of laying there with my eyes closed, I hear the sound again. But this time, I'm pretty much awake, so I recognize what the sound is immediately. Someone was knocking on my window. For context, I'm a single female living alone in a basement suite, so my windows are basically level with the sidewalk. Anyways, obviously I'm freaked out and I don't know what the heck to do. I don't want to move and make any loud noises so they don't know I am home, and I'm just frozen laying in bed. Then I hear the knocking again. I instantly bulk up as my fight or flight kicks in, and I run to the front door, which has my keys with my pepper spray on it. The keys clink together and make a noticeable noise, and the knocking starts to get more intense and loud. This is when I realize the window with the screen by my bed is almost all the way open because my cat likes to sit on the edge, and I forgot to close and lock it. I start to freak out. Already having major anxiety, I start looking for my phone just in case that I need to call the police. Me being fucking clumsy and shaking from anxiety, I drop my phone on the ground, and whoever is at my window proceeds to what sounds like slid either fingernails or a sharp object down the screen. I realize that this person's intentions are either to come in or scare me. So, like an idiot and not thinking, I run to the window as fast as I can, and I slam it shut, and I lock it while avoiding looking outside at whoever it was. The knocking stops, and I wait about 30 minutes without hearing any knocking. I lay back down and go right back to sleep. The next morning, I honestly couldn't believe that even happened to me. I start to think maybe it was a dream. So I go outside and investigate, and I see an empty beer bottle and my ripped blanket. I text my only friend that knows where I live and ask them if they were messing with me. And they say no, which I figured because they don't drive and live quite far away. And the buses around my house stop running well before 3 a.m. So I called my landlord and told him what happened, and he says to ignore it and that this has happened before, which is really creepy. Anyways, I obviously recognize now that I should have done a lot of things differently and called the police right away. It hasn't happened since, but nonetheless, still super terrifying. But I can't afford to move again, so creepy bro knocking on my window, let's not meet again. The Man at My Window, Listening and Staring by u/Bitchshortage. This was 2004 when I was 20 and living in a small 2-level apartment on the main floor of a building. Out front, there were 3 stairs, then a deck, then 3 more stairs to the front door, and another little narrow deck that ran the length of the front of my apartment, which besides the door was all windows. The main floor was a tiny kitchen/living room, and a door to the hallway for laundry/parking access, all of which is totally visible from the windows. It was fall in Western Canada during daylight savings, pitch black early, and surprisingly warm for the season. I had all my windows open and hadn't closed the blinds as to get the breeze in, and was talking on the phone to my sister. I had my back to the windows, and when I turned around, I thought I saw something weird at the window. It was really bright inside, so I turned the main light off and see a man pressed against the window staring at me. I screamed, and I told my sister that a man is on my deck looking at me. He seemed to take off into the darkness, and I turned off all the lights inside, put the outside ones on, and I was babbling to my sister like, "Holy shit, a Peeping Tom, so scary, I can't believe it." And then he just walks back up the deck. I screamed again, "He's back! I have to call 911!" I hung up and did, while his face was pressed against the window and it was still open. The windows were floor to ceiling with screen cracked open bottom sections that I had to open to the max and could for sure accommodate a determined person crawling in. He could hear me and the 911 call, but he didn't move. I had crouched down in the dark room and the main light was off so he couldn't see me, but I had the lights on beside the door to the hallway and on the stairs to the bedroom, and I didn't want to move and let him know where I was. I should have run into the hall and banged on a neighbor's door, but I was in shock, and after all, the cops are coming from a station 10 blocks away. They'll get here soon, right? Then the 911 operator said, "We can't find your address." I'm directly behind the rec center at X and Y, a corner unit unmistakable area landmark, and the only apartment building there. The man at the window starts banging on the glass. I was whispering, but I assumed that he heard me give panic directions repeatedly, and we both can't hear sirens. It felt like this would go on forever when he finally just ran off. I couldn't see far, and there were plenty of places to crouch and hide, so I was not sure at all. I peek out to see the police car, so I told the operator that they're here. But then, the car starts to drive away, and the operator told me to go outside and flag them down. I don't know why I actually did, because I was scared shitless, but when I did, they rolled down their window. "Ma'am, do you need help?" "Oh, you're looking for me, I think. I called 911. "We're just driving by, but what's the problem?" They never found the man that terrified me and made me feel so unsafe that I moved. But it was truly the cops not being able to find the only apartments behind a notable building that completely shook me. The frightening endnote: when I moved out, they tried to charge me because apparently the downstairs screens are shredded from my cats. The screens were pristine the day the creeper showed up, and that was the last time that I opened the downstairs windows or blinds, or used the front door. The property manager laughed and mocked me, called bullshit when I said someone cut them, until I showed her the police report. She lived there too, so suddenly it's not so funny. Watching Me Through the Barn Window by U/Girl Lock. We used to have a tiny barn on my property, and it was my job to milk our dairy goats every morning. So, every single morning at almost the exact same time, I'd be in the back corner of our lot to milk. It was in a fairly isolated area of our yard and between 3 neighbors' fields or pastures, which was intentional since goats can be talkative. So, it was right beside our neighbor's chain-link fence or grapevines. I'd sing fairly loudly every morning since there was generally nobody to be bothered, and it calmed down the goats. So, it was easy to know that there was a girl back there every morning and night. This particular morning, my mom had a bad feeling and made my little brother go with me. He was bored, so he messed around and collected eggs while I milked. There were little windows all around, including a wide one right behind me, and the doors were wide open, so I figured that he'd come back eventually. Well, I saw him walk past the doors and start talking to somebody. I figured it was the neighbor, so I didn't worry when he said, "Okay, I'll get my mom," and then took off. Then I heard the chain link fence behind me rattle, and I turned around just in time to see a man launch himself over the chain-link fence into the neighbor's yard. He'd been watching me and waiting since before I got into the yard. I don't know what he would have done if my mom hadn't made my brother go with me that morning. And I did get out of goat milking solo. Why I Have a Fear of Windows by U/Troubled Waves. I live in a small town. You blink and you miss it. The best we can boast about is a single stop sign and a gas station which we only have because of the nearby highway. Any actual semblance of a town is 25 minutes away. So when things get scary out here, it's amplified. The occasional homeless person is no big deal. They're often drifting through. Drug addicts run rampant and will steal everything if they can from your house. But it's the normal out here. However, what happened a few years ago certainly wasn't normal. Originally, I was dead asleep in my bed. I only woke up because it was burning hot in my room. But it was summertime and not much that I could do. I just remember tossing and turning until I get a creepy feeling that fell into the pit of my stomach. I left the light on so I wouldn't trip and die if I had to pee in the middle of the night. But next, I glanced at the window directly across from my bed. I had no curtains, but I did have a shitty set of blinds. Part of the blinds are broken from wear and tear, and the crappy AC output beneath it would make them move back and forth, so you'd get a glimpse outside every so often. The yard light was still going, but what made me stop was the outline at my window. The figure of someone was directly at my window, almost like it was waiting for the blinds to move to watch me. I didn't have an imagination as a child. That had been trained out of me. But the sight was enough to pour every horror film into my head at that moment. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled my blankets over my head and slept in a cloth oven that night. By the morning time, the figure was gone, and I remember running to my mom's room on the verge of tears in the morning, telling her about what happened. She laughed at me like I was an idiot and told me that it was probably just a stray cat that had climbed up there for one odd reason or another. I almost believed her, since my window was pretty high off the ground, but something didn't sit right. Later that day, when we were doing yard work, I glanced over at my window and saw one of our metal patio chairs had been pushed up to it. I pointed out to my mom, who proceeded to chew me out. "That's how the cat probably got up there, moron! Stop leaving furniture everywhere!" But I hadn't moved it. It was heavy enough that I struggled with it. So we moved it back, and so began a pattern. At night, I'd see the figure, complain to my mom, and we'd find a chair moved back every single morning. This went on for a few weeks. My mother stopped caring about my concerns until one morning, we saw where the outside screen of my window had been sliced open. I still remember her shaking her head and complaining about those damn stray cats that we had still yet to see. I could tell she was unnerved by that development, but I couldn't handle it anymore, and I opted to sleep in our living room that night. The only problem was, our kitchen and living room were connected, which meant there were always several windows. The first night of my move went well, despite my back hurting from the couch. I avoided my room like the plague, and it wasn't about 4 days later that we ran into an issue. I woke up and glanced at the clock above the fireplace. It read a little past 3 a.m. I couldn't realize why I'd woken up until it happened again. There was a beam of light shining in from the kitchen window, almost like someone was shining a flashlight in. I saw it trace along the walls and land on the love seats across from the couch that I was on. I was mortified. When I told my mom, she continued to laugh at me. I gave in, and I decided that I would sleep in my dad's room, even though it had a gigantic window. He slept in the recliner with a huge TV, so I felt more safe having someone around. The yard light was directly outside the window anyways, and it seemed foolproof. That was until I woke up out of habitual fear and watched through the window across from my bed. Everything seemed normal as time dragged on, and I felt like a moron. Maybe my mom was right. That was until I saw a lone figure come out of the woods by the backyard shed, walk directly under the light, and head to the patio furniture like he'd been here plenty of times before. I still remember the large build the man had, and the confidence like he was the one who lived here and wasn't creeping around my yard in the dead of the night. I just remember listening to the TV until I fell asleep again, hoping to get another glimpse. My dad would have been pissed if I had woken him up. He was grumpy on a good day and terrifying on a bad day, and I didn't feel like risking it unless I had solid proof because I was scared. The next morning, my mom chewed me out again for the patio furniture, which was routine almost a month later. But this time, something new happened. She demanded that I stop playing in the toolboxes of the garage. A bunch of tools had been taken out and left on our doorstep. Screwdrivers, a large hammer, flashlights, and many more. But it wasn't me. I begged with my mom and pleaded with her. Just stay up with me one night. We couldn't close our garage because it was an open carport, and I wasn't going to get my ass beaten for touching tools because of someone else. It was driving me mad. And finally, she agreed. That night, we stayed awake in the living room. I fell asleep before my mom did, but I remember her waking me up in a panic. She pointed to the window that overlooked into our garage, and we could see the top of someone's head as they walked back and forth. There was a sound of someone placing metal tools down on the brick steps, as if they were trying to be quiet, but couldn't fully muffle it. She whispered for me to go wake my dad. My dad was angry, having been woken up in the middle of the night by his frantic daughter. He grabbed his pistol and headed out of the back door towards the front of the house, where the garage was located. We heard my dad screaming and someone dropping tools. Then, the shot of a gun twice. The frantic footsteps pounding out of the garage felt like they were coming from my chest, and my mom peeked out of the window, then opened the door, and my dad stumbled in. He had missed both shots because of his unstable aim, but told us that there was a man crouching at our front door looking at our door handle. None of us slept that night, and in the morning, the law from the closest town arrived. They didn't do much besides ask if anything had been stolen or for a description of the man, and then told us to install cameras. That was it. They said the guy was probably just looking for something easy to steal for quick money. If that had been the case, then why hadn't he stolen the tools, the generator, the welder, or broken into any of the vehicles just sitting in the garage? We've finally set up hunting trail cameras around the house, but nothing has happened since. Coming home from college for holidays, I still have nightmares about the incident years later when I sleep in my own bed. I don't know what he was looking for or why he did the things he did. But whatever the case may be, man at the window, let's not meet. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.